welcome to an everyday canines video. In this video about the A-frame, I'm looking at the things that can go wrong and how you can be eliminated or faulted on the A-frame. Now, we have our basics, which you should by now, if you've watched all the videos, know, and that is if you don't hit your contacts, then you get 5 faults. That's not an elimination. You can actually still win a class with 5 faults if you were the fastest time and no other dog went clear. That being said, you can't progress with faults, not in the UK anyway. You can't move up a grade with faults or gain points to moving up. There is an up contact and a down contact, which we talked about in the dog walk video. If you haven't watched that, quickly whiz back to that and you'll see it in the contacts video we did. Dogs should hit the up contact with at least a paw. It can be a toe of a paw, but it has to be a paw. And they should also hit the down contact. Now, there was a little bit of discussion about, are up contacts still being judged? Is it still important? And for a while, people could get away with iffy up contacts. But what I'm seeing now is that judges are saying, yeah, you do have to get the up contact as well as the down contact. So if you've got a big dog, that is something to focus on and concentrate on, because a lot of big dogs, they hit here quite naturally, actually. It's not that they're doing anything wrong particularly, but that's just naturally when their momentum takes them, it takes them here. I've seen Labradors doing that, German Shepherds, and Collies, of course, bigger dogs. If your dog is doing that, that's something you're going to have to look at, because that will automatically get you a 5 fault. And, it's not worth, worrying too much about the speed over if they're going to be constantly missing this and getting a fault. It's just that balancing act, so you need to be aware of that. Downs are obviously more obvious to most people, and yes, you're down, your dog must get at least one paw, or rather one toenail of a paw, past this line. Ideally, we want all 4 paws if we can help it, because then we know we've got it solid. Judges aren't too worried about if your dog is there and then leaps or runs. That's a different story. It's just about if they get that paw there. And of course, if you're doing a stopped contact, then your dog would go all the way to the bottom and stop. So they're your main bits. If your dog misses them, if your dog missed the up and it missed the bottom contact, then actually you'd end up with 10 faults because you've missed both contacts. The next thing to be aware of is if your dog runs past the obstacle. And we've looked at this before, and it's the same as any other obstacle. So if your dog runs past, what we're talking about, it's not if your dog gets here and then, do you want me to do the A-frame? Does it? Usually, unless you're in the really higher levels, you'll get away with that. What we're talking about is if the dog gets to here. So as soon as it gets past this line, if you like, here, once its head and foot have gone past there, if the judge will now classify that as a refusal, because the dog has not attempted the obstacle correctly. It's actually gone past the obstacle. It's refused the obstacle. We think about it a bit from horse show jumping and stuff. It is that point where they've gone, no, I'm not doing it, or I'm not doing it at that moment. Even if the dog were then to jump up onto the side, you are looking at that judge probably faulting you, giving you a 5R, which most judges do like this. They judge it. That's 5 faults. That's a 5 refusal fault, slightly different. Because your dog did run past the face of the obstacle. So if we look at where Swift is standing right now, if she was doing this and then jumped on the side, technically the judge could give me a refusal for that because she has actually gone past. Some judges might say, well, she got there and then she climbed up, so no, but fair enough if they did give you a refusal on that. It is the dog has done it incorrectly. Now, one of the behaviours you might see, and it's more common than you realise, and it's always entertaining, is the dogs get up here and they stop. And they have a good look around. Now, we could argue all different reasons why dogs do this, and we're not here to talk about that. It's a variety of things. Sometimes it's a confidence thing. Sometimes dogs get up there and they smell something because they're higher up and they go, oh, what's that? I've seen dogs stop because there's a mirror there and they've looked at themselves in the mirror. Whatever the reason, if your dog gets up there and it does stop, it doesn't matter. It's not a refusal, it's not a fault. You're losing time, obviously. So if you're in a class and you're hoping to win it, that costs you time and you might not be the fastest time, so then you might not win. But it doesn't actually earn you any sort of refusal, faults, elimination, anything. You're just wasting your own time, basically. So if you have a dog that does that, it's not the end of the world. You're not been faulted. Just make sure the dog does come down and do the contact correctly. Now, one thing I failed to mention with your dog walk, and so I'm bringing it up on this A-frame, and to be fair, happens more likely on the A-frame than on the dog walk, is what occurs if for some reason the dog chooses to go underneath the A-frame. So it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. So supposing you needed your dog to come over with you to that far side of the A-frame, and you called them and you were expecting them to run round the A-frame, and instead they just did the shortcut, which is go straight under. And you can see this is a big area, so the dog could pick that as a shortcut. Now, that is taking the obstacle incorrectly, and it's also taking the wrong obstacle. So that would be an elimination, most likely, because not a refusal, it's not a 5 fault. The dog actually went under an obstacle that it shouldn't have been anywhere near. So that's an elimination. Same applies, by the way, if you jump over the obstacle or touch the obstacle with your foot when you're trying to get past it. You can't do that, you'd be eliminated. The difference is, though, if you have a tunnel under the A-frame and the dog is supposed to take the tunnel, then yes, they are going under the A-frame, but they're doing an obstacle, so that's not an elimination. And so the obstacle, as long as it is the obstacle they were meant to be doing next, then that's fine. So that's just the slightly variation. You know, if there's nothing, then the dog goes under it, even if it didn't take the A-frame as such and it's going to the next obstacle it's supposed to take, that's wrong. But if there's a tunnel and it's meant to take that tunnel and it's meant to take the tunnel next, that's right, and that's fine. So they're your main areas of where things can go wrong. It's not technically an elimination or a fault for the dog to jump on the side of the A-frame as long as it hits the contact area and come over. Same as if the dog comes down the A-frame and jumps off the side again. If they hit the contact area, that's okay. But it's not ideal unless you did actually want the dog to turn. Other things to bear in mind is that though the A-frame, you're supposed to still have a straight run up to the A-frame, it can be slightly a tighter and a slightly more difficult entry because the A-frame is wider. So a dog can get on the A-frame and it can adjust itself. A dog dog can't. If it hits it at the wrong angle, it's flying itself off, it's going at speed. But on the A-frame, because it's wider, even if a dog comes like this, they can usually save themselves. So you can have slightly harder turns onto the A-frame, though nothing dramatic. You wouldn't ever see a situation where they asked your dog to do a turn like this, where it's a complete wrap like that. You wouldn't see that. So I hope that all makes sense and gives you an idea of what you're going to be looking for in your training and then when you're moving up to competition. And I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video, and if you have, you might subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.